The following is Maurice Nicoll, given on November the 29th, 1947. Centre of gravity, Sun, Moon and Stars. A question was asked at one of the groups recently. What is centre of gravity? How to define it? It is necessary to review the different senses in which this term is used in the work. As in everything in the work, we have to distinguish between a mechanical centre of gravity and a conscious centre of gravity in oneself. 1. Life as centre of gravity. Here come in the categories of man. Man number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In the case of man number 1, man number 2, man number 3, centre of gravity is used to signify the centre chiefly used in the approach to life. That is, in the case of man number 1, his life centre of gravity is either in moving centre or an instinctive centre. Man number 2 approaches everything emotionally to begin with, that is, by liking, disliking, and so his life centre of gravity is an emotional centre. Similarly, man number 3 approaches everything theoretically, intellectually, so his life centre of gravity is in intellectual centre. These are the life centres of gravity of mechanical mankind, and by reason of these differences, man cannot agree with man. This is therefore called in the work the circle of confusion of tongues, or the circle of Babel, or simply life. By contrast, the conscious circle of humanity, number 5, 6 and 7, understand one another. 2. The next meaning of centre of gravity is used in connection with work. The passage from the mechanical to the conscious circle of humanity is impossible without the help of something different from life and its daily stresses and strains. So the work is called a different third force from life. Let us speak of this second meaning of centre of gravity, which must begin with point in the work, that is, a genuine feeling that the work is important. A point in the work begins with evaluation. The gravitational force of the moon is strong enough to affect the movement of tides, etc. on the earth. Now the work teaches that as we are, the moon acts psychologically on us. The external universe, represented physically by visible sun, moon, stars, etc., is also within us, not physically, but psychologically. So the work, speaking psychologically, says we have to make moon in ourselves. Man is a microcosmos, but not fully living in a macrocosmos. The physical visible man and the physical visible universe are represented also on another scale, that is, a psychological scale, not complete in man. The moon, physically, literally, is lower than the earth. The sun is higher, the galaxy is higher, and so on. But this external symbol of the seen universe is, the work says, in us psychologically. That is, when it is said that essence comes from the stars, it means psychologically. The essence comes from a high level. Can you grasp that the external visible represents the internal invisible? As within, so without. Yes, but do you see? There are scales in the visible universe and scales in yourself corresponding. If you had solar consciousness, then you would be at the divine level of the sun, represented outwardly, visibly, in the scalar structure of the outer world as the literal, physical sun, but not the inner psychological sun, only present and contracted within through inner consciousness. I speak here of higher centres. People all through the ages have worshipped the external physical sun. Here the difficulty arises of separation of literal and psychological, of material and spiritual, of outer and inner. A difficulty which for all who persist in holding to the work will finally cease and a marvellous inner world of experience open up. Man is born in the vast universe composed of myriads of moons, suns and galaxies. He is inevitably stamped by it as by his mother. But it is represented in him as a ladder. In the ray of creation, which is a ladder, is shown how one traces down from all other possible rays, our ray, our sun, our planets, our earth, our moon. An enormous machinery is apparent. But abstracting from the physical representation, the universe is partly in man as well as outside him. So the work speaks of our moon psychologically as a powerful influence in us, the influence of forming intractable habits. The action of the moon, Gurdjieff said in so many words, is like a weight. It controls organic life which covers the surface of the earth as a sensitive film. It is like a weight on a pendulum. Its influence is to keep everything where and as it is. It uses organic life as its food. From this point of view, life on earth is a pain factory. Early in the work, Mr. Ouspensky said to us, "It is necessary to make moon in oneself. Try to see what is meant." What can this mean? It means that we must make something in ourselves that will resist the influences of life. Some ancient writers called this escaping from prison. As machines, we are driven by outside life. We are functions of life. We react to everything as machines do. First, we have to see this is so genuinely, not extravagantly. The gradual realization of this mechanicalness of oneself is the beginning of awakening. Remember, only you can awake to yourself. I cannot awaken you. If we could change our responses to daily impressions, if we could resist the customary effects of daily life upon us, we would be creating moon in ourselves. We have, therefore, as it is taught, to isolate ourselves from the effects of life on us, not from life. If we live mechanically, and by now some should really know what is meant by that, and understand that one can sit in a chair doing nothing, and yet think and feel mechanically. If, I said, we live mechanically, then moon eats us. It takes all our energy, especially when we are negative. Notice it is your way of taking life you have to work against. That requires long self-observation. Now you have often heard that each act of non-identification saves energy. It is anti-mechanical. And if it is accompanied by self-remembering, it actually creates a higher kind of energy and so an increase of consciousness. Now there are three main things which help to isolate us from the personal effects of life upon oneself: self-remembering, non-identifying and non-considering. All this creates moon in oneself. Going against habits does the same, but it is best to begin with psychological habits, such as the habit of being negative, the habit of being asleep, the habit of making inner accounts, the habit of hating, the habit of being sorry for oneself, and so on, for of course the more you hate, the more you feel sorry for yourself. The work says that man on earth is under many influences. The earth is under 48 orders of laws, that is, influences playing on you like shifting spotlights. It also says that the moon is under 96 orders of laws. To be under the moon is to be under the greatest possible mechanicalness, and as you know, this is the case in a man, a woman, who is fast asleep, governed by every form of negative emotion, hate, internal considering, and so on. By work on oneself, one can come under fewer and better influences or laws. This is why we work on the lines laid down in the practical teaching of the work. As a result of obeying them, one rises in the ladder of being, represented by the ray of creation. But this rising is only possible through sacrifice. To behave as you always do and expect to rise is impossible. One must, to begin with, sacrifice one's suffering. All self-pity, all self-cradling, vanity, secret, absurd fears, all self-sentimentality, all inner accounting, all pitiful pictures, all sighs, inner groans and complaints must be burned up in the fire of increasing consciousness. Remember, there is no justice under higher laws, such as we understand justice. Higher justice, heavenly justice, is to work on yourself, so that when you die, you have no accounts. The question only is then, in spite of all these difficulties, you may mention, what have you done beyond yourself? So it is said elsewhere, ye shall be judged every man, every woman, according to your work. I would add, what situations have you transformed? Yes, this is worthwhile reflecting on, and as deeply as you can. If you can as yet even reflect at all on this thing that you cling to and so wrongly take as yourself, and on what it is doing to you in the way of unhappiness. Remember what has been so stressed, what you react mechanically to, what you take impressions on is not yourself. It is the machine. It is something that is not you. Can you, in the midst of a negative scene, say, this is not I? If so, you eventually can relax to an extent that I simply cannot describe to you. Only non-identifying gives inner peace. Understand that real experiences in the work cannot be described to another who has not reached the level of them. It is like trying to describe the taste of something lovely that another person has not tasted and perhaps can never taste. Now, in the supreme sense, when we begin to make moon in ourselves, we are making a work centre of gravity distinct from life. Only a third force different from the third force of life can do this for and in us. Only a psycho-spiritual force can do it, derived not from life and the dull, heavy, habit-forming, mechanicalizing influences of the moon, but from those more graceful who have gone before, up the side ladder to the sun, and left us memorials of the way to follow them. This is the first and greatest idea about forming centre of gravity in oneself. Only with this centre of gravity can a man reach that level of being called number 4 man, a man in whom all centres begin to work, and who is given the unique insight and revelation to see that things appropriate to each centre are not contradictory any more than autumn is a contradiction to spring.